Mr. Edwards has our prayer and pledge. David?
Would you bow with me as we pray? Lord, we thank you for this good day. We thank you for the opportunities and the challenges that have come to us. Lord, we thank you for this wonderful place that we call our home. And pray that you continue to bless all of us here. Lord, give our counsel today and tomorrow wisdom, strength, and perseverance to make good, fair judgments over our city. Lord, continue to bless the people of Murfreesboro, that they would all prosper in this sweet place we call home. In Jesus we pray. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have an Earth Day celebration planned here at City Hall, and it looks like maybe the weather is not going to cooperate, so the Earth is going to show a little tantrum perhaps. So I would ask anyone who's interested in Earth Day, and those of you who might consider going, that we may use an alternate rain date location, which could possibly be the Patterson Senior Gym at Patterson Center. So our organizers are going to make that final call tomorrow, and they have a hotline set up. And if you will call that for more information, 494-0407, 494-0407, and hopefully we'll be able to give you a better idea about what the weather forecast is going to be and how we can get Earth Day off to a great start regardless of where it is. We're really looking forward to that, and it's a great celebration, and we'll have as much fun no matter where we have it. So 494-0407 to kind of check on the progress and the weather forecast and where we'll hold Earth Day. It's currently planned at our Civic Plaza, but we may have to move it. All right. Council members, you have your consent agenda before you if you've had an opportunity to read that. Are there any questions regarding the consent agenda?
Mayor, if there are no questions, I move we approve the consent agenda.
All right, you have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. You also have before you the minutes of a meeting held on April the 15th, 2010, a regular meeting. If you've had an opportunity to review those minutes, are there any questions? Are there any deletions or additions that need to be made to the minutes of April 15th, 2010?
Mayor, hearing none, I move we approve the minutes as presented. Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, we'll consider for renewal a certificate of compliance for Chi Chi Yang and Zhu Yun Huang at R&B Liquors, 2441-F Old Fort Parkway. Ms. Wright?
Mayor, this is a 2-year annual renewal required by the state of Tennessee, and they have met our requirements.
All right. Seems they have met all the requirements. Is there a motion that we reissue this certificate of compliance?
Move to be approved.
Second.
Motion and second. Please call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. You have your renewal. Pursuant to a resolution adopted by City Council on March the 11th, 2010, we'll now conduct a public hearing to consider rezoning approximately 0.45 acres located along Bradeville Pike from single-family residential 10, RS10 district, to a planned commercial development, PCD district. Songkyo Yakabada is the applicant. Notice of the said public hearing was published in the April 4th, 2010 issue of the local newspaper. We'll also consider for passage on first reading an ordinance to rezone an area located along Bradeville Pike to a planned commercial development following the adoption of the resolution. Welcome, Ms. Ely.
Thank you, Mayor Bragg, and
How are you?
welcome, council members, especially Mr. Edwards. The first public hearing this evening is a rezoning request for approximately 0.45 acres located along the north side of Bradeville Pike. This property is just west of the intersection of Minerva Drive and Bradeville Pike. It's currently zoned RS10, which is single-family residential district. The properties contiguous with this property to the north and to the west are also zoned RS10, and that zoning has been in place for at least 25 years. The properties to the west and to the south are zoned CL, which is our local commercial district. Adjacent to the property on the west side, which is directly on the corner of Minerva Drive and Bradeville Pike, is a convenience center. In that convenience center is a restaurant, automotive repair, a hair salon, and a gas station. And also across the street is another gas station. There's also an international grocery store. And there's also a car lot on the corner zone PCD. This section of Bradeville Pike is a 2-lane ditch section street without sidewalks. It is in our major thoroughfare plan, and there are plans to improve that, and that'll be a TDOT project. The applicant would like for you to consider rezoning this property to PCD, Planned Commercial District. There's a program book that was included with your agenda materials this evening, and that program book outlines specifically what the request is for. Essentially, that he would like to build a 2-unit structure, which is 3,136 square feet in size. As proposed, the following uses will be permitted: dry cleaning without a drive-up window, a bakery, retail, a barber, beauty shop, general retail, general electronic services and repair, a pet shop, flower or plant store, and financial services. The program book also outlines the number of parking spaces allotted for each of these uses. I did want to mention that I included some photographs of the property, and those were included in your agenda materials. You can see that there's an existing single-family structure on the site. Also, I would like to point out that the Planning Commission initially, when considering this item, asked me to prepare a study, and I did, and I included that study in your materials, to look at a larger area, the 11 parcels that are along Bradeville Pike that are currently zoned RS10, to look at considering rezoning those to commercial use as well. After reporting my findings and providing the Planning Commission with a study, they took no action on the matter because they thought that the risk of having possibly poorly designed sites was something that they weren't willing to take. Their existing houses and on these 11 parcels, one of them has a church and a funeral home, and I guess the concern was that if it were zoned CL, then the owners would opt to try to convert the structures into commercial structures, and therefore they would end up being a poorly designed structure. So that study is there for you to view. If you have any questions about that, I'll be glad to answer that, of course. The Planning Commission, 7 members were present the evening of this public hearing. 6 of the 7 members recommended approval of this rezoning request. But their recommendation also had 3 contingencies. The first was that the fence that was outlined in the program book had to be increased from the 5 feet to 6 feet. The book you have has the fence shown at 6 feet tall. The second was that they wanted the convenience store to be expressly prohibited. So on page 1 of the program books, you can see that the applicant has put a statement in there saying, no convenience market shall be permitted as a use for this site. The concern was maybe that general retail could be misconstrued and then a convenience market could be put there. So the applicants complied with that as well. And the third was that the Planning Commission requested that they limit the hours of operation for any solid waste services to access the site, limit those hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Also on page 1, you'll see that that has been written as a statement in there, and therefore it will become part of the zoning, and it will be enforced through a zoning ordinance in the future. Mr. Kevin Gunther is here this evening. He's going to give you a short presentation on what their request is. After his presentation, staff will be able to answer any questions that you may have, or you may prefer to go ahead and hold the public hearing and ask questions afterwards. We're available whenever you would like for us to speak. And I'd like to invite Mr. Gunther to the podium.
Thank you, Ms. Ely. Good evening, Mayor Bragg and council members. As Ms. Ely had indicated, we've been working on this project and carefully with staff as well as Planning Commission to try to address concerns as they come up. And this is a site that we are not proposing a reuse of the existing building. As was pointed out, we are proposing a new building on the site. I wanted to point that out. We are adjacent to a commercial node. We're trying to make sure we fit that very carefully. We realize we are also adjacent to residential property and have taken some measures to try to bring some comfort level to the zoning request. One of those measures is a 25-foot buffer adjoining the residential property, and this is twice the size as would normally be required with a standard landscape buffer. We're also adding the fence, as was indicated, and some additional landscape material as part of that buffer. As for the dumpster location, I did want to point out that the dumpster, as was mentioned, will have limited service hours. We will not be allowing service pickups. We will only be allowing service pickup between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. And then also wanted to point out that there will be a fence around the dumpster as well as the privacy fence on the property line. We've worked with staff to decrease the size of this building to make sure that it fits on the site, and we've increased the parking to make sure that we have ample parking. And we have also worked closely with staff on the architectural style of the building. We wanted to create something that would fit in the character of the neighborhood and still have that timeless feel. We felt that all brick application was important. We've agreed to that. And I did want to point out that Ken, the owner, is here this evening also if you would like to ask questions directly of him. So with all that being said, that as I pointed out, we've been working carefully as issues come up. I did want to mention that we've heard some concerns since Planning Commission hearing, and that we are open to taking more time to evaluate this if the council feels that's necessary. So with that being said, I'll happy to answer any questions either before or after the public hearing as you see fit.
The developer is Chris Wan, is that correct?
Ken is the developer. In addition to Chris, they're partnering on the project. Ken is the owner.
Ken is Saya Buddha?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I heard you say Ken, and I was trying to figure out who was here.
We call him Ken to make it easier.
I understand. In his country or where he was born, perhaps he would call us a different name, too.
Correct. Yes, sir.
I understand.
I do want to point out that he has been a resident here and worked at Nissan for many years, and this is his opportunity to start a business in Murfreesboro. He's been saving his money and owned this property for some time, and this is why he brings this zoning request to you.
All right. Any questions?
Mayor, I have a question.
Mr. Young.
Originally, this building was bigger, and you've downsized it?
Yes, sir. We've downsized it by a good 1,500 square feet. And we've also limited the uses to make sure that we wanted to have flexibility for the property so the property owner would have success at his business, but we also didn't want to compete with some existing uses that are right there at the commercial node.
You did not want to compete.
Specifically, the market that was discussed, yes, that was an agreement the property owner made in discussing with adjoining property owners.
Okay, other questions? Hypothetically, obviously the setback on the adjoining property is different, and you have pushed this building all the way back. Hypothetically, from a planning point of view, or in order to encourage development that in the neighborhood, obviously, if our rules allowed, would it be better to take that 10-foot side setback away, push the building over toward the other commercial building, and leave a larger parking, or in other words, just in order to try to make it look more like the other building? I mean, this is a very attractive design. That's not what I'm trying to accomplish. I'm trying to use the same setback that the building next to it has in order to make it a more adaptable or appropriate use.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I understand.
Well, instead of pushing the building all the way back and putting the parking in front of it, could you pull it up and then put your parking down the side and still get your green space, or
even in the rear?
or even in the rear? I mean, if you look at your piece here, that your commercial property is set forward, if you see what I'm saying.
Right.
And instead of having it all the way back there in the back with all that parking in the front, I mean, just hypothetically, if our rules did allow it, would that be a more appropriate way to look at utilization of the property?
We certainly are open to repositioning the building hypothetically. We had to work very carefully to get the parking requirements met. We also want to make sure we had that buffer. So that's what really drove the current location of the building.
When you look at an older neighborhood and you see, I don't know what this is, a 50 or an 80 or 75-foot lot, one of the things that we've always tried to overcome is giving everybody a curb cut, to traffic manage. And the only problem is this just looks like we're allowing what we've tried to overcome. And I realize it's an older neighborhood, and you only have the opportunity on half-acre, quarter-acre lots, whatever they are.
Correct. I think, on this site, the only way to get the parking that we need is to put that parking in front of the building, unfortunately. If we were to try to put the parking around the back of the building, it may be possible, although very difficult. That would probably eliminate the additional buffer that we've created, though.
Well, and the other thing is to some agreement with the adjoining property owner to share parking. And again, that's something I think the city would want to do. I'm not putting that burden on you. I'm just saying that if we've got 11 lots that hypothetically could be redeveloped, we really wouldn't prefer probably to do them single. We'd rather fix them so they could all work in concert, as opposed to having to look at each separate little lot trying to decide what to do with it and what made it work. That's all I was suggesting. Any other questions before I open the public hearing? All right, we'll open the public hearing at this time, and anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning of approximately 0.45 acres located along Bradeville Pike, please step to the microphone and give us your name and address, please. Is anyone here wishing to speak? I might remind the council that I believe we had the next door neighbor called my office and asked me, Ms. Delbridge, to send to you some comments that she had, and I believe you've each received those comments.
Yes.
I thank her for calling. Anyone wish to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and we'll consider for passage on first reading an ordinance to rezone an area located along Bradeville Pike to a planned commercial development PCD district. Vice Mayor.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'm kind of looking at this. I know as I read I guess it was the Planning Commission and the staff's comments in our minutes, and Mr. Alott may want to give his thoughts on that. He had if I'm reading this correctly, he had a lot of he didn't have a very high level of comfortability with this. I know he struggled. As a matter of fact, I think the words was he struggled with it for quite some time on several different points and areas, one being the domino effect. I think I read that in the minutes as well, Mr. Alott, of taking out this one home. Can you share what you think from a staff's point of view, if you could, Mr. Alott, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Bradshaw. Staff has struggled with this application. We've struggled with it in part because the zoning in this area has remained in place since, well, before I came here. It's been since 1984 in this way. This property is the buffer for the next property and the property to the north from the existing commercial area. My biggest concern is that when this property is rezoned, it will set in motion over a period of time a series of rezonings for the next property, and then the next property, and then the next property. I know Ms. Delbridge, and I've had exchanged calls with her many times over the years. Someday Ms. Delbridge will no longer be there, and when that day comes, someone else will have different ideas for her property. If this property that we're talking about tonight is no longer used for residential purposes, it will be a very likely, will be a likelihood that that property will be asked to be rezoned. So I've always, I think this would set in motion something that may be hard to contain. We studied the zoning of the area because we wanted to see where that zoning may end up. And we felt that if we started, we would no doubt end at the funeral home down the street. And so I urged the Planning Commission to begin the discussion of, well, if it's going to happen, in what form should it take? Another one of my concerns is that if we see the series of rezonings, some structures, like Ms. Delbridge's house, is a brick house, a much nicer house, and maybe worth more, and someone may want to try to adapt it to commercial rather than tearing it down and completely replacing it. That may be better than, well, it may be worse than this case, because when they do that, the ability to get around to the back with a proper drive for vehicular access may be limited because the building is set. The ability to landscape, the ability to get handicap access will all play into to it, the ability to meet codes and all that. So I'm concerned about that prospect, and the Planning Commission was too. After a discussion, they felt, no, we don't want to see the existing structures adapted into a commercial use. They would much rather see someone come in with a plan for them and see how we're going to answer the questions. Now, as that conversation related to this property, we discussed a lot about our concerns about how small this lot is. And when I say our concerns, I'm talking about the staff concerns. This property is very limited in its ability to meet minimum parking requirements, the ability to meet stormwater regulations, the ability to meet landscaping and buffering requirements, and to be able to have enough area to build a structure that would offer enough returns for the developer, the owner, to afford to do all those things. It's my fear that after meeting your minimum parking, after meeting your landscaping obligations and screening, after building a nice building, the developers quite simply won't be able to afford the overhead because he doesn't have enough square footage and enough returns coming to the property. So I'm concerned that this is going to be a very marginal development. Another thing about the property, because of its width, there is not much ability to design a good parking lot. I fear that if there are several cars in the parking lot and we have limited the solid waste pickup to 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock in the evening, so that's going to be during the daytime hours when the listed uses will more than likely be in use, that the solid waste truck driver will have to back into Bradyville Pike to exit the site. He will not have room on site to be able to get to the dumpster, turn around on site, and exit properly. He'll have to back out. And that's a big concern of mine. We know that Bradyville Pike has a substandard condition, no curbs and gutters. It's a little bit narrow. It's near an intersection. So all told, the staff has had a lot of concerns about this site. One last thing I want to point out is what we don't see is the design for stormwater. And part of the open space, particularly adjacent to the structure, that area will almost certainly have to be used for stormwater quality as storage. We do know that there is a little bit of a drainage condition in the area. The property is very flat. The drainage network in the area is old, and probably it's due in several years for a project similar to what we're seeing in Leaf Avenue, because it's a similar vintage in terms of the time when it was constructed. So these people are going to have to put stormwater elements on the site. We don't see how they're designed yet, but we can predict they're going to be in that open area on the west side of the building and parking lot.
Thank you, Mr. Adlow, for that information.
Any other questions or comments regarding this ordinance on first reading?
Mayor, there's some legitimate concerns with this project, but one of the concerns is the evolution of the older houses being turned into office space, and that's not what the city wants in its long-range planning. But in this case, that's not going to happen. He's going to raise the old house and build a new building. So I think that fear is subsided in that particular area. I'd like to see some more questions answered on this project. I'd like to see us look at it in 30 days, 45 days, let the developer answer some of these specific questions that we have on this. And I'd like to hear some comments maybe from
Well, you know, Mr. Young, I appreciate his comment. Mayor, can
Vice Mayor.
you know, I want us, we want to see growth. We want to see commercial growth. I mean, that's encouraging to our community, encouraging to our tax base and to the city. But we want to make sure it's done in the right way. This has a lot of unanswered questions, one being it's in a residential area. It's taken out an existing residential home, and there are a lot of unanswered questions more than there are, answered questions. And you got to have a level of comfortability going into it. And Mr. Alott brought up a lot of questions that I'd like to see answered as well. So, I'd like to see us maybe defer this for a period of time until we can get those answers and get some more input, have him work with staff a little bit better maybe, and see if there are some answers to these questions that are bothering, at least bothering me at this time, and Mr. Young.
All right, any other?
But it is a good-looking building. I think it has some merit to that.
Any other comments?
Mayor, I'd just like to say that over the course of time that we have looked at this, the Planning Commission, this is a project that has grew and evolved and changed and rechanged several times, and perhaps I think the others are right, that there's still a little bit more evolving for it to do before it's ready to have its final look by us.
Well, I certainly promote and appreciate redevelopment. But I think somehow or other, Mr. Alott, the city staff is going to have to help us come up with a way to do that fits what we need to do today, because as many of us know, for years now we've complained about curb cuts out South Church Street and curb cuts on major thoroughfares, and it's very hard to let you redevelop a half-acre lot without at least some consideration to the adjoining property and how it could either tie together or work with that property through the zoning and the requirements that we have, and not look at the site as a standalone site that has to stand on its own merits. That's one of the things that we've tried to do, is to develop much larger pieces of property, and I'm sorry that our developer here has gotten into this piece of property and found that it's problematic. But by the same token, it's just something we've tried to eliminate over a period of time, and I don't think any of us are really very comfortable, especially along Bradeville Pike, being a major thoroughfare just like any other major thoroughfare, of just adding to the danger level and the curb cuts and the just inappropriate half-acre lot development. So, did we have a motion to defer?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to defer this to a future date. So, no time limit.
All right, we have a motion to defer some date in the future. We have a second. Any other discussion? And I think this is a fault of if I can say this, it's just something that we probably have seen coming and we've just not addressed. And I'll ask Mr. Lyons if he would to work with staff to try to help us look at these types of neighborhoods where they're going to develop commercially, because they get a lot of people who live around them, and it's time to redevelop them, and see if there's some way we can put something like that together. That's
yes, sir.
On how to redevelop half-acre lots, quarter-acre lots, three-quarter-acre lots.
We've got to watch the impact on those older developments. They are a challenge.
All right, we have a motion and second. Any other comments? Please call the roll. This is a motion to defer.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Pursuant to a resolution adopted by City Council on March 11, 2010, we'll conduct a public hearing to consider amending approximately 13.5 acres in Garrison Cove Section 5 Planned Unit Development PUD District by deleting multifamily residential lots, and to delete approximately 7.5 acres located east of North Rutherford Boulevard and south of Higgins Lane from the said Planned Unit Development PUD District and rezone it to Residential Multifamily 12 District. Old South Properties is the applicant. Notice of the said public hearing was published in the April 4th, 2010 issue of the local newspaper. Ms. Ely, welcome again.
Thank you. Thank you again. The subject property tonight is located just south of Higgins Lane and north of Willowbrook Drive, along the east side of North Rutherford Boulevard and Las Casas Pike. It's a part of the Garrison Cove Section 5 PUD Plan Unit District Development. The property if you take a look at the map, you'll see the area shaded yellow is the Garrison Cove PUD. And then the zoning request is essentially a two-part request, and it's shown in the blue color and in the orange color on the map before you. The first part of this request is to rezone the blue area, which is 13.5 acres, or to amend the PUD zone in the blue area. Currently, the blue area and the orange area would allow a maximum of 150 multifamily condominium units. The developer would like to change the use, thus would need to amend the plan. So the plan that he's proposing for you for the blue area are 26 single-family lots. These 26 single-family lots would have a minimum size of 15,000 square feet and would have the same restrictions that are on the lots that are currently existing on Higgins Lane. They would have access to Higgins Lane, which goes to Norris Lane, and they would look exactly like the houses currently in Garrison Cove. The second part of the request is identified in orange on the map before you, and that's 7.5 acres. That request is to rezone 7.5 acres from PUD and zone it RM12. The request to zone this property RM12 is because they would like to join it with the property to the south, which is the Willowbrook condominiums. The RM12 zone would allow the development of this property with condominium units. The Willowbrook Homeowners Association, these properties will become a part of the Willowbrook Homeowners Association, and essentially would just be an extension of that development. During the Planning Commission public hearing, we had several questions from homeowners in Garrison Cove development about access. The single-family lots in the blue area will not have access to the orange area to the south. Likewise, the condominiums, the Willowbrook condominiums, will not be able to access Garrison Cove. They'll have to go to Willowbrook Drive, which goes to North Rutherford Boulevard. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend this two-part rezoning request. Mr. Steve Steele is here this evening, and he'd like to present the item to you. I included in your agenda materials a program book that he has given to us, and that shows the single-family lots laid out. The program book, since the request is to zone the southern portion to a blanket RM12 zone, there's no design given. That'll be something that'll be reviewed at site plan level, and the Planning Commission will review that. Mr. Steele, would you like to come to the podium? If you have any questions about this request, staff will be glad to answer them at any time you see fit.
Now, the area in the blue is called the Preserve at Garrison Cove.
The area in blue is the zoning application calls it Garrison Cove Section 4 PUD. That's what the zoning application calls it. The blue, they're all part of the same PUD right now. It's all part of the Garrison Cove.
Yeah.
The yellow, the blue, and the orange is all Garrison Cove. But the amendments are only to the southern portion of those two parcels there, the blue and orange area. The yellow area is remaining exactly the same. And since the current plan dictates that the blue and orange area has 150 condominium units, since the applicant wants to change that, they have to go through the rezoning process because it is a planned development.
So the orange up on that is, you mentioned something about not having access to, I guess, Garrison Cove, that it would be part of Willowbrook.
That's right, sir.
And the drawing that I see, which is attachment B, is that the original?
What you're looking at is the original plan, and so as originally approved, this was a part of Garrison Cove, the 150
And
condos.
so we don't have a, well, maybe we do.
If you look at, it's called Attachment 4 IV, Concept Plan for Proposed Phase 4, Garrison Cove Section 5 PUD, February 2010. That shows the 26 lots. He doesn't have anything that shows the RM12 lots, but it should be closer to the, I can look at my book.
Attachment what?
I don't think we have.
Attachment 4.
I don't think we have that.
I don't think we have.
I don't see that in the program book.
We don't have that. It's on the map now.
Did you leave it out?
Okay, there.
Mr. Steele must have not included it for you. He didn't include it for the Planning Commission members. However, I do have it on the screen before you.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can see that.
When that goes that street it goes out, when it gets to the other street, it turns right and goes out to Rutherford, is that correct?
That's right. Go back to the, so you can see the green area, it looks like there's a small parcel that joins Higgins Lane. So you'll go onto Higgins Lane, and it'll take you to Norris Lane, and that'll put you on North Rutherford Boulevard. Of course, you can keep going north and access Las Casas Pike.
But it's the yellow or the orange that I'm asking about, because that's what you said would not connect.
Right. There's nothing in this book about the orange area.
That's just part of the amendment, which would be to pull that section completely out of Garrison Cove.
Right. And
Zone it
rezone it.
RM12. So you don't have a site plan of that?
He didn't provide any materials for that. Just a commitment that there will be no access to the north, and we'll hold him to that. We'll keep his feet to the fire on that.
That was my question. Any other questions of Ms. Ely before Mr. Steele comes up? If not, Mr. Steele.
Thanks, Ms. Ely. Mayor Bragg, council members, thank you, and sorry if there's any confusion with that. Basically, what I'm here on behalf of Garrison Cove Partners, of which John Floyd is a partner, and he is here with me. This plan development was approved back in May, I think, of 2004 here at this body, and a large part of Garrison Cove Section 5 has been built, the single-family home portion of that. But part of that approved plan development included about 21 acres of townhomes. And I think the approval was some 140 to 150 townhomes. Now, none of those have been built. And what we're wanting to do is to take that piece of property, take about 2/3 of it, the part that adjoins Garrison Cove 5, and continue the Garrison Cove 5 footprint of single-family homes. Same restrictions that are in Garrison Cove 5 would go into this about 13.5 acres. The other 7.5 that we're asking you to remove from the PUD, we ask that you rezone it back to the RM12. That's what it was zoned before the PUD, and it was in fact part of the Willowbrook Drive townhomes development. So we're really going back to what we had planned before. I think that's a better use of the property at this time. Again, as Ms. Ely mentioned, the Garrison Cove vehicular access will be all through Garrison Cove. The Willowbrook Drive portion will be out to the south through Willowbrook Drive. And if you have any other questions or comments, I'll be glad to try to address them.
I think the second or third time you mentioned straighten that out for me. Yeah, thanks. The first time I didn't get it all.
Mayor, question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Young.
Mr. Steele, if I'm a Garrison Cove neighbor or Baskin Brook, the sizes and the building restrictions are, if I understand this, going to be the same?
Exactly the same, yes, sir.
Square footage per?
Minimum home size is 2,800 square feet of living area. They will have to use brick and other suitable materials that are subject to review by the Architectural Review Committee of the subdivision. The minimum lot size is 15,000 square feet. And there are other restrictions, but Garrison Cove Section 5, what's been done today was developed in 3 phases, and all 3 have identical restrictive covenants, and this would adhere to those same restrictive covenants.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it will go in with this RM12 all Willowbrook that's all the way out, well, not quite out, looks like to Stratford Hall. Is that right across Rutherford?
The Willowbrook Drive, the orange portion,
Yes.
the townhome portion, will come out Willowbrook Drive to Rutherford Boulevard.
To Rutherford, okay.
Yes, sir.
So that's
Straight
all,
out.
that's all currently RM12,
That's
and it's all built
currently-
out, is that correct?
There might be one spot left. Yeah, about 5 acres
Thank you.
left. Yes, sir.
Other questions for Mr. Steele before I open the public hearing? If there are none, let me open the public hearing at this time, and anyone wishing to speak for or against this amendment to the planned unit development and the kind of rezoning back to the residential multifamily 12 for the portion noted, please step to the microphone and give us your name and address. Is anyone here wishing to speak? Anyone here at all? Anyone wish to speak? If not, I'll close the public hearing at this time, and we'll consider for passage on first reading an ordinance to amend approximately 13.5 acres in the Garrison Cove, Section 5 Planned Unit Development, PUD District, by deleting multifamily residential lots and to delete approximately 7.5 acres located east of North Rutherford Boulevard and south of Higgins Lane from the said Planned Unit Development, PUD District, and rezone it to a residential multifamily RM12 district.
Mayor, if there are no questions, I move for passage on first reading.
Second.
All right, you have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? If not, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Thank you, Ms. Ely. At this time, we'll consider any beer permit applications. Ms. Wright?
Mayor, we have two tonight. We have a convenience store that's changing owners at 105 River Rock Boulevard. It has met the city's requirements for that permit to be issued. And we have a new restaurant coming to 2992C South Church Street that has met our background check inspection and hopes to get their final C of O the first of next week, and would like to go ahead and have that permit issued once they meet that requirement.
All right, council members, subject to any of the qualifications she mentioned, it appears these meet the requirements. Is there a motion we accept the beer permit application?
So moved.
Second.
All right, you have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. At this time, you have a revised list of the statements to be considered for payment. Are there any questions regarding those payments to be made by the city? If not, is there a motion we pay the bills?
Pay the bills.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Board and commission appointments, I would like to recommend the appointment of Chris Schaffner to replace Terry Womack as the ex officio member to the City Hall Art Committee. I make that recommendation to you.
Move we approve the recommendations of the mayor.
Second.
All right, motion second. Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Aye.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Vice Mayor?
Are we ready? Are we, is it,
It's other business
Other
from the
business.
staff
Well,
or city council, and you qualify.
I do.
That's which.
As debatable. I just, as everyone's aware, we just got through the elections. I want to congratulate you, Mayor, as you won the election, and along with Mr. McFarland and Mr. Young. But I wanted in particular to say something about Councilmember Edwards. I wanted to tell him publicly that I've enjoyed his service, and I've enjoyed actually sitting beside him. I know that he's a quality individual, good man, got a good heart. It's not the length of your service. I can testify to that, but it's the quality of your service. And
How have you been on quality?
I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you, David. You're a good man. God bless you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm sure we all appreciate Mr. Edwards and enjoyed serving with him. And in that light, and as a excellent segue to a resolution that I would like to introduce at this time to the council, honoring David Edwards for his service to the city of Murfreesboro. And with your pleasure, I would like to read that resolution and offer it to you. Whereas David Edwards was elected to public office in 2006 and has served faithfully as a public servant of the city of Murfreesboro for the last 4 years. And whereas David Edwards has spent valuable time away from his family and away from his profession as vice president of private banking group at Pinnacle Financial Services and as the office manager of Pinnacle's 114 West College Street branch, and benefited the city by his service. Whereas David Edwards demonstrated his interest in his hometown and its governance before being elected by serving on the city's Planning Commission and Historic Zoning Commission, and by serving since his election as the council's representative on the Murfreesboro Airport Commission, the Cable Television Commission, the Linebaugh Library Board, and the Board of Zoning Appeals. And whereas David Edwards has been a strong proponent of several city projects which have come to fruition during his term, these have included improving the physical protection of citizens through automated red light enforcement and improving the economic well-being of the city through adoption of a defined contribution pension program for city employees. And whereas David Edwards has consistently emphasized the importance of fostering better customer service to all citizens and the adoption of a comprehensive financial policies, and both are to be major goals of the city's 2010-2011 fiscal year. And whereas David Edwards has also served various civic and charitable organizations with dedication and distinction throughout his life, now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, as follows. Section 1. The City Council of the City of Murfreesboro goes on record saluting, commending, and honoring David Edwards for his dedicated service to the citizens of the city as a member of the Murfreesboro City Council. And Section 2, this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its passage and adoption, the public welfare and the welfare of the city requiring it. I recommend that to you. I would like to ask that there be a motion.
Mayor, I move that that be approved and adopted.
Second.
All right, motion and second on this resolution. Any questions? Call the roll, Ms. Wright.
Vice Mayor Bratcher.
Aye.
Mr. Edwards.
Pass.
Mr. Gilly.
Aye.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Young.
Aye.
Mayor Bragg.
Aye. Mr. Edwards, I give you this resolution. It's your copy. And I also give you a proclamation from the City Council signed by the Mayor, which commemorates this, and we're very pleased and proud of your service. We enjoy being with you. We don't want you to make yourself scarce.
Thank you,
We
Mayor.
want you to stay around. We depend on you, and we appreciate it. Mr. Edwards, I know you get emotional, as I do sometimes at these transitions, but you might have something that you want to say, and if you want to save it for another date, I certainly will invite you back to be there at the council's request, but I understand your emotion. It is a solemn and sacred duty that we take on, and I appreciate what you have done, and I hope you know that we appreciate working with you these many years, and it has been a pleasure. One thing I left off, you have served on the board of the directors of the Tennessee Municipal League and have done an excellent job there and certainly been a wonderful resource to the cities across Tennessee as a board member, and I want to recognize that service too.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
Been an honor.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to say?
Mayor, I'd just like to go on the record as saying that David Edwards is one of the finest individuals that I've ever had the opportunity to know and to serve with, and he's going to be deeply missed on this council.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
All right. You're not going anywhere. We're going
Nope.
to have you around, so
This is my home.
we're proud of you.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any other business to come before the council? If not, then you are adjourned.